All right. This is my latest edition of my 2020 mock draft. I put this out on Tuesday, January 14th. And this is after the College Football National Championship game. I'm hitting on all 32 first round picks, and then I hit up on 5 second round picks, the teams that don't have a first round pick. So 2 Bears picks, Texans, Jaguars, and Rams. So let's go ahead and get started. Number 1, I think this is pretty obvious. I have the Cincinnati Bengals taking Joe Burrow. He looks like he's the consensus number 1 pick in this draft. It's almost like you could write it in Sharpie at this point. Now, I still think there's an outside shot. Justin Herbert is at the Senior Bowl. He's being coached on the South team by the Cincinnati Bengals. So there's some outside chance that the Bengals could fall in love with Justin Herbert, but I think that's kind of a stretch at this point. I think Joe Burrow is going to be that pick. He had one of the best college football seasons we've seen out of a quarterback, probably since Cam Newton. He's from Ohio. He played high school football in Ohio. So I think this is just a great fit. I also think he fits with what Zach Taylor wants to do in that his version of the West Coast offense, timing-based routes. He's an accurate thrower, shows good anticipation. So I think he's a logical fit. And based off of the season that he had, I think it's probably a no-brainer. With the second pick, I think this is also one that we can almost put in pen at this point, and that is the Washington Redskins taking Ohio State defensive end Chase Young. Chase Young is my number 1 prospect in this class. Huge fan of him. He could do it all. I compare him a lot to, I think he can have a Khalil Mack type impact in the NFL. A guy that could play in a 3-4 defense, a 4-3 defense. He can rush from the inside. He can rush from the outside. He shows speed. He shows power. He's improved on his pass rushing repertoire. He's the best defensive end I've seen come out in the last several years. I like him better than Jadeveon Clowney. I like him better than Myles Garrett. And I think the Redskins are going to get a steal here. And he's going to give the Redskins another young defensive lineman. So they're going to have Montez Sweat, Chase Young, Daron Payne, and Jonathan Allen. So a young, talented defensive line for the Redskins. Pick 3 is where I think the draft starts, and the Detroit Lions could really go a lot of different places with this third pick. I thought, this might be a spot for Jeffrey Okudah. I thought this might be a spot for one of the top offensive tackles. Instead, I went with Derek Brown, the defensive tackle out of Auburn, with this pick. If you look at the Detroit Lions, defensive tackle doesn't really seem like a huge need, but Damon Snacks Harrison's got a massive contract. Could they be looking to move on from that? A'Shawn Robinson, their other starter, is a free agent after this year. Mike Daniels, they brought him in on a 1-year deal after he got cut by the Packers. He's a free agent. So even if they do keep Damon Harrison, they need another starter. And Matt Patricia's shown in his defenses, he did it when he was in New England. We see it with Snacks Harrison's. We see it with A'Shawn Robinson. He likes these big physical guys, and that's why I think Derek Brown would be a good fit. Now, I'm not a huge Derek Brown fan. I like him. I have him as a first-round player. I don't think he's one of the 5 best prospects in this draft, but he fits with what the Detroit Lions want to do. He's big. He's probably one of the most powerful defensive lines I've seen in the last several years. He shows good movement skills, and that I just am leery of these big, massive defensive tackles, taking them early. We've seen guys like Vita Vea, not have these big careers so far out of a guy that's drafted this early. So that makes me a little leery, but he fits with what they want to do. He's dominated in the SEC, so I can understand if they do go that route. At number 4, I have the New York Giants taking Georgia offensive tackle Andrew Thomas. Now, David Gettleman is old school in what he wants to do. He's a guy that wants to build through the trenches. He wants to run the ball. He doesn't like to trade out of their picks. So that's another thing to kind of remember is teams looking to get the quarterbacks, Justin Herbert, Tua Tagovailoa, the team that they probably want to trade with is the Detroit Lions, because I don't see the New York Giants falling back. Another reason why I think that the Giants go with Andrew Thomas here is David Gettleman, in an interview just within the last week, talked about how the teams that are deep into the playoffs this year are the teams that ran the ball. At least that's what his quote was. And everything that you hear, especially with drafting Saquon Barkley a couple years ago, is they want to improve this rushing attack and, in essence, protecting Daniel Jones. So that just screams drafting an offensive tackle. Andrew Thomas isn't my number one tackle in this class, but I have a feeling he's going to be the first drafted, and my mock drafts aren't what I think. They're what I think will happen, and I think Andrew Thomas would be a fit there. Left tackle, put him in there to replace Nate Solder. You've got Will Hernandez that you've drafted. You've got Kevin Zeitler who you've brought in, and improve this offensive line, because if Daniel Jones is their future, they invested a 6th-round pick in him. They've invested a 2nd-round pick in Saquon Barkley. They got to have guys that could block for him. At number 5, I have the Miami Dolphins taking Justin Herbert, and I have them taking Herbert over Tua Tagovailoa, who I actually have as my number 1 quarterback in this class. But this seems to me like what the Dolphins at this point could be doing. At some point they're going to have to take their franchise quarterback. They have 3 first-round picks this year. You would think that they would draft the guy that they want. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if they didn't, but we heard last year going into the draft that they had their eyes on this 2020 class, and 2 of the names that popped up were Justin Herbert and Tua Tagovailoa. So it makes sense that they would go with one of these guys here. Now, Tua seems like he'd be a better fit with what they want to do, more cerebral quarterback, accuracy in that. But the Dolphins, according to Matt Miller, one of Matt Miller's sources, Matt Miller from Bleacher Report, has stated that they've done the most homework on Justin Herbert, and he kind of fits with what this team with the Dolphins have wanted to do on drafting and developing high ceiling type guys. And Justin Herbert's a guy that if he hits, he can be a guy that could be a top 10 elite quarterback if he hits. Now, he's got his flaws, like a lot of quarterbacks that come out into the draft. He didn't have spectacular numbers. He doesn't have a lot of signature wins. Even his good wins this year, he didn't put up huge numbers. I think this year, if you look at him compared to Josh Allen, they're both big, they're both athletic, they both can run, they both have strong arms. Justin Herbert's a lot more accurate. He's shown on game tape that he can throw the ball with touch and anticipation. And if Josh Allen can go in the top 7, there's no reason why Justin Herbert can't go here. And I think he's he's got a higher floor, and he's got just as high of a ceiling. So I think the Dolphins take him, look to develop him behind Ryan Fitzpatrick. They don't have to rush him on the field, and I think this is a good match there. The quarterback picks continue with the number 6 with the Los Angeles Chargers. I haven't taken Tua Tagovailoa, the quarterback out of Alabama. Here's a franchise that's moving into their new stadium. They've got the Rams with Sean McVay and the glitz and the glamour. They need their own buzz, and I think drafting a guy like Tua, who's this big college football star, helped Alabama win a national championship, put up huge numbers, I think that's going to do a lot for the Chargers in that fan base. He's a Hawaii guy, so, being out in California, he's closer to his home. You got a lot of people, that could draw that in too. But most of all, he's an elite talent. He's my number 1 quarterback in this draft, and that's, I don't factor in the injury. He's got the injury designation because he's had 2 ankle surgeries, an ankle surgery on each of his ankles. He's got the hip injury, and I think that's what causes him to fall to the Chargers here, being the 3rd quarterback taken. He's a smaller guy too, but the Chargers need someone. Even if they do bring back Phillip Rivers, they need that future guy, and I wouldn't be opposed to bring it back Phillip Rivers for a 1-year deal, develop and rest up Tua, get him healthy before he comes in. But the Chargers need that franchise guy, and I think Tua Tagovailoa, if he's able to return to full health, can be an elite franchise quarterback in the NFL. Number 7, I have the Carolina Panthers taking Iowa offensive tackle Tristan Wirfs. Now, this was a tough pick for me because I went back and forth between Jeffrey Okudah, the Ohio State cornerback, and Wirfs. The Panthers need to improve their defense, but I just think here's a team that needs offensive line help. There's 3 elite offensive tackles in this class. Wirfs is available, and you hiring a head coach who's been an offensive line coach in the past. It just, to me, that makes all the sense. You could put Wirfs in. He's got experience both on the left side and the right side. Maybe you put him on the right side and try out Darrell Williams again at left tackle. Maybe you try out Greg Little at left tackle. And then if that doesn't work out, maybe you move Wirfs over to the left side where he's had success at Iowa earlier this season. I think he's one of the best. He's my number 1 offensive tackle in this class. He's got it all. He's always on balance. He shows the lateral quickness. He shows good strength. There's everything you want out of an offensive tackle. You've got Tristan Wirfs. Number 8, the Arizona Cardinals. I haven't taken CeeDee Lamb, the wide receiver out of Oklahoma. He'd be the first wide receiver off the board. You're hearing a lot of rumors that the Cardinals really like CeeDee Lamb, and he fits with what they don't have. They don't have, other than Larry Fitzgerald, who's not really this type of player anymore. They don't have this big, physical, down the field type threat. And CeeDee Lamb would also reunite with Kyler Murray, who he had a lot of success with at Oklahoma. Lamb's a guy that can get downfield. He can win contested catches, reel off big plays. He can run intermediate routes. There's a lot that CeeDee Lamb can do. He can give Cliff Kingsbury in this offense a true number 1 receiver. He can complement those guys that they brought in the middle rounds last year for the Cardinals. Kyler Murray showed quite a bit at the end of the season. Like, he's a guy that could be, a good quarterback in this league. Now you just got to get him weapons. At number 9, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars taking Jeffrey Okudah, the cornerback from Ohio State. I don't think they necessarily have to go with a quarterback with this first pick, but with a guy like Okudah available, it'd be hard to pass on him to be the replacement to Jalen Ramsey. Here's a guy that's got good size at 6'1". He's got effortless speed, a guy that could just turn and run with any receiver down the field. He's shown this year good ball skills, the ability to go up and break up passes, the ability to come forward. Heck, even against Nebraska, he caught an interception lying on his back. So whether they're running a press man scheme with what they have done in the past with Jacksonville, I think he fits perfectly into that. Gives them another number 1 corner opposite of A.J. Bouye. And like I said, helps ease in the burden that they do trading away Jalen Ramsey. At 10, I have the Cleveland Browns taking Jedrick Wills, the offensive tackle for Alabama. He played right tackle for Alabama this past year. He is one of my favorite tackle prospects in this class. The minute I watched him, he just jumped out, just so effortless in his lateral agility, smooth. He, such strength. He got that. A lot of times he'd get that one hand up and just lock on to the opposing pass rusher, and then they were done. He showed some nastiness in the run game. Cleveland needs offensive tackle help. I think from what I've seen, Jedrick Wills shows the skill set that he could play left or right, but it doesn't matter in today's NFL. You need good tackles, and they signed Chris Hubbard last year from the Steelers. I think Wills could come in, compete at that right tackle spot. Maybe you move Hubbard around and find a better fit for him. Maybe you try Wills out at the left tackle. Regardless, I think he's a top 10 talent. I think he's an elite offensive tackle. There is an offensive line shortage in the NFL. So when you need offensive line and there's an elite guy here, I think you got to take him. At 11, we have the New York Jets. I haven't taken K'Lavon Chaisson, and I think he had a bit of an coming out party in the college football playoff this year. He'd been hurt all of 2018 with a knee injury. He had missed several games this year with injuries, and so he didn't have huge sack numbers. He didn't have a dominant season like a Chase Young, but I think he's a guy that's a top 15 pick. And if he's healthy, he shows power, he shows explosiveness, he shows that bend around the edge. And the Jets need edge rushers. For so long, they were getting by with Todd Bowles' scheme of blitzing their linebackers and using their front four to rush. They don't have those edge guys. And they thought they had one in Anthony Barr last year to be a 3-4 outside linebacker. He decided to stay with the Vikings, and they never got anyone to replace him. They drafted Ja'Kai Polite in the third round, and they ended up cutting him before the season even started. So I think if a guy like K'Lavon Chaisson is available, I think they jump on this, get that edge rusher that they desperately need in Greg Williams' system. At number 12, we have the Las Vegas Raiders. It's the first time I've said that. I have them taking Isaiah Simmons, the linebacker from Clemson, and I have a feeling like this is low on Simmons. I would not be shocked if he was a top 10 pick. He is such a dynamic player, and in today's NFL, you need these multifaceted linebackers that can do it all. And Isaiah Simmons can literally do it all. He started his career at Clemson as a safety. They use him all over the field. There's times he lines up as the deep safety and he's playing center field and reacting to the ball in the air. He's covered up tight ends. He's covered up slot receivers. Heck, in the national championship game, he was lined up out wide as an outside corner. He was lined up as an outside linebacker pass rusher. He's an off-the-ball linebacker. I think he can do it all. I think his best fit is to get with a team that will utilize him in a variety of different ways. The Raiders have Paul Guenther as their defensive coordinator. He likes to blitz those linebackers. He likes, he's relied on those guys to do a lot. We saw Vontaze Burfict in Cincinnati when Guenther was there do a lot of different things. Isaiah Simmons is the new age linebacker, and I think the Raiders, who desperately need linebackers, would jump at the chance to get him. At 13, I have the Indianapolis Colts taking Jerry Jeudy, the wide receiver out of Alabama. And I know quarterback is an interesting topic. I cannot see the Colts taking a quarterback with that 13th pick. Now, I'm not saying it won't happen. I never will say that it won't happen. I just don't see it because general manager Chris Ballard has shown in the past that he is not a huge risk taker. He likes to hit for doubles, not home runs. And we've seen that with picks over and over again since he's taken over. And so you have to look for the safe route, and they need a receiver. I think the best receiver in this class is Jerry Jeudy. I compare him a bit playing style to Odell Beckham Jr., where he's not this big 6'4" wide receiver, basketball type guy. He's a guy that's about 6 foot, 6'1", but he's got elite speed. He's got good route runner. He can go up and win contested catches. I think Jerry Jeudy is an all-around receiver, an explosive athlete, a good tactician with his routes. And the Colts need to help Jacoby Brissett out with receivers. They drafted guys like Paris Campbell last year. They took Deion Kane on day 3 a couple years ago. They signed Devin Funchess. They need to give T.Y. Hilton some help. And I think Judy's another guy that they can use. Frank Reich can move him around from the slot to the outside. And it just gives Brissett another weapon to throw the ball to. At 14, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking A.J. Epinesa, the defensive end from Iowa. And when you look at the Buccaneers and you look at what a lot of people are mocking, you see a lot of those edge rushers, the 3-4 outside backers like K'Lavon Chaisson and those type of guys. And I don't think that's what the Buccaneers want, especially out of a draft pick here. Last year they had a chance to take Josh Allen, and they didn't, and they took Devin White, a linebacker. Todd Bowles' defenses, even if you think back to what he was in the Jets, they never had true edge guys. He wants to rush with his front four. He wants to blitz with his linebackers. And, they kind of run basically a 4-2-5. And so what I think with this pick is it's very similar to what Arizona did several years ago with Robert Nkemdiche. They drafted kind of that 5 technique defensive end, a guy that can rush off the edge, a guy that can rush in the interior. And I think Epinesa is a guy that can do that. He's not this bendy, super athletic guy around the edge. He shows speed, he shows the ability to bend, but he's more of a power pass rusher who's a good 5 technique defensive end. So I think he can play that defensive end in the Tampa Bay system. They could slide him around a bit. So on passing situations, Shaq Barrett's coming off the edge. You can move Epinesa into the 3 technique, and he's shown at Iowa. He wreaked havoc on Minnesota in their game at the end of the year, rushing from the inside. And I think this kind of 10 to 20 range is perfect for Epinesa, and I think he'd do very well with what the Buccaneers are looking for out of their defense. At 15, the Denver Broncos, I have them taking Trayvon Diggs, the cornerback out of Alabama. Uh, the Broncos will be in an interesting spot in this draft, sitting at 15. Where do they go? And I think cornerback is the fit right here because, they need guys that fit with what Vic Fangio wants to run. He likes the bigger cornerbacks, the 6'1", 6'2" guys, the guys that could play in zone, the guys that can play some cover three. And I think Trevin Diggs is that type of guy. When Vic Fangio was in Chicago, they drafted Kyle Fuller. I think Trayvon Diggs can be a similar type of player to that. And I think they get one of the cornerbacks here to fit with what they want to do. At pick 16, I have the Atlanta Falcons taking Virginia quarterback Bryce Hall. Dan Quinn looked like a guy that was going to get fired at the beginning of the, halfway through the year. And he ended up saving his job. But he's got to get this defense fixed. I know injuries have been a huge part of it, but they need to get better talent. And one of the positions that I feel that they've underachieved at and not really had the guys that you typically see out of this Seattle-style cover 3 is that tall, lengthy outside cornerback. And I think Bryce Hall fits that. Extremely long. He's got good ball skills. And I think, having him with Desmond Trufant and those guys, I think it gives them something. And if they can have those guys, they're guys like Deion Jones stay healthy. They had safeties get hurt. But if those guys can come back, they get some pass rush, they get some better play at cornerback, this is a team that could still make a push for the playoffs. And I think it all starts with this draft and improving that defense overall. At 17, I have the Dallas Cowboys taking Grant Delpit, the safety out of LSU. I think safety is one of those positions that is a bigger need for the Cowboys. Delpit's a guy that struggled this past year. He was a guy that I had rated as in my top 5 after watching him this summer. His sophomore tape was some of the best safety tape we've seen in the last couple of years. But he struggled this year, especially he had a high ankle sprain. Towards the end of the year, he was back to being at full health, and he started to play a lot better. He's best suited playing out back deep and reacting forward. And I think the Cowboys could use some safety help there. They've got a new defense with Mike Nolan, and he's very aggressive and mixing up coverages with his secondary. So a guy like Delpit who can react to the ball, they want to force turnovers, so I think he fits with what they want to do. At 18, this is the Miami Dolphins pick from Pittsburgh. I have them taking USC offensive tackle Austin Jackson. And this may be a little bit early on him, but I think you're going to see your top 3 offensive tackles go early. And so if somebody else is going to slip into the first round, and I think a guy like Jackson, who has good athletic ability, who has that high ceiling, I think he's the guy that goes in there at this point. As I said with Justin Herbert with the Miami Dolphins 5th overall pick, they want guys with high upsides, and Austin Jackson, they need offensive tackle help. He's got that high upside, so I think, you get your starting quarterback at 5, get a guy to protect him at 18. At 19, this is the Las Vegas Raiders' 2nd first-round pick. This is the one they got from Chicago in the Khalil Mack trade. I have them taking a receiver here in T. Higgins. The Raiders, coming into the season, they're supposed to have Antonio Brown. He was going to be their star receiver. Tyrell Williams was going to slot in at the number 2. They had Josh Jacobs. Derek Carr was back. And things were looking like, hey, we got this team that could get going. Well, we all know what happened with Antonio Brown. And that really threw this offense kind of in a tailspin, even with Josh Jacobs emerging and showing why he was a first-round pick as a running back. They need some receiver help, and I think T. Higgins would be a good fit. He's not this super speed burner. He's got the speed to get deep, but he's more of a contested catch type guy. I kind of look at him as a DJ Chark type of receiver, a guy that can win downfield, who can go up and win contested catches. Derek Carr's got the ability to throw the ball deep. They want to be a power rushing attack, so I think Higgins would be a good guy that could, win those contested catches on the outside, win over the top, especially off play action. So I think it's a good fit. They need a number one receiver, and I think Higgins would fit well with them there. At number 20, Jacksonville Jaguars. This is their second first-round pick. This is the Rams pick that they got in the Jalen Ramsey. And I have them taking a defensive tackle here in Javon Kinlaw out of South Carolina. The Kinlaw reminds me a lot of Jerry Tillery in the fact that they're both taller defensive tackles. They have good length. They're explosive. They can penetrate. And Jacksonville's got some issues with the defensive line. Calais Campbell's going to be coming up as a free agent. Traven Bryant's kind of been hit or miss. They could use some more production out of the defensive line, and I think Kinlaw's a guy that can be kind of moved around a bit initially, but I think he's going to slide into that 3-technique defensive tackle. Here's a guy that was not on a great South Carolina team. He would see double and triple teams, and he would still have production out of the position. So I think he's a guy that I could even see higher than the 20th pick, and I think if he's there, Jacksonville is just going to swoop him up pretty quick. At 21, I have the Philadelphia Eagles taking Alabama receiver Henry Ruggs. And I know a lot of people really like Henry Ruggs, and I like him too. I'm not as high on him as most, and I still do need to watch a little bit more tape. But he is, in essence, a speed receiver. He has elite speed. He can win over the top. He can throw him a short pass underneath, and he's got space he can go. Philadelphia needs help at receiver. They're having guys like Greg Ward, who played well at times, come off the streets to contribute to him in playoff games. Alshon Jeffrey can't stay healthy. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside's not as good as a lot of people wanted him to be. He struggled with his transition to the NFL. And then Deshaun Jackson, when he started the season off with the Eagles and was very good, but then got hurt and wasn't able to come back. And I think that deep element, that speed element to the receiving core that they had with Deshaun Jackson, they need that. And I don't think you can rely on Deshaun Jackson to do that. So I think a guy like Henry Ruggs, if he's available here, would be a perfect fit for what the Eagles need out of the receivers. If you pair him up with a healthy Alshon Jeffrey, I think they complement each other well. This could be a steal and a guy that really fits with what they want to do. At pick 22, I had the Buffalo Bills taking Colorado wide receiver Laviska Shenault Jr. Here's a guy who, if healthy, I think is a top 15 pick. He can do it all. He's slot, the outside. They put him at running back. They put him in the wildcat. He's got the power. He's gets the ball in his hand. He's like a running back running through guys and showing that explosive power. He shows the ability to run routes. He can go up and get contested catches. But the big thing is he can't stay healthy. So I think that's why he falls into the 20s here. Buffalo, I think this is just a perfect fit. Who knows if it will happen? I think if he's available and they want to go receiver, they could definitely make this. I could also see Shenault falling to the second round because of injury concerns. But Buffalo needs some big guys that can go up and get the ball. They've got speed and John Brown. Robert Foster had success in this offense. They had Cole Beasley. They've never had that big guy that can go up. Josh Allen, for as much as he's improved, is still not an overly accurate quarterback. And he doesn't, those speed guys are great for him to throw deep, but what about those intermediate routes? What about when those passes are off target? You need a person who can go up and get it, and I think Shenault would be perfect for what they want to do there. 23, New England Patriots. I have them taking Tyler Baez, the center for Wisconsin. New England's biggest weakness as the season wore on is they couldn't protect Tom Brady up the middle. And he was getting lots of pressure. He was getting frustrated. He didn't have the time that he normally does to make those throws down the field. Ted Karras struggled this year at center. I think they see Baez available here, and they say, hey, we need to get strong up the middle. We don't need this super ultra athlete. We just need a tough, physical, technical guy that can come in, solidify the middle. You got the ultra athlete and Joe Thuney next to him. You've got Isaiah Wynn coming back at left tackle. And I think they need to protect Tom Brady up the middle, and it starts with the center, and Baez is the elite center in this class. So if he's available, it would not shock me if they took him at 23. Pick 24 is New Orleans Saints. I haven't taken a receiver, and I haven't taken Penn State's KJ Hamler. Here's a guy that literally exploded onto the scene this year with his elite speed. I think he's very similar to Henry Ruggs from Alabama. So I think a team that was maybe hoping to get Henry Ruggs and missed out on him could possibly target KJ Hamler. He's only a redshirt sophomore, but he was the go-to guy for Penn State's offense. Whether it's down the field, whether it's short routes. The Saints could utilize another receiver opposite of Michael Thomas. Thomas is great in the slot. He's great running those intermediate routes. He's, not the, tremendous route runner, but not an elite athlete. I think you put that athlete next to him, draw some of that attention away, and I think this offense, who kind of sputtered, you saw them against the Vikings in the playoffs. They couldn't really do anything. They need some help for this offense at receiver, and I think Hamler's a guy that could definitely fill that role. At 25, the Minnesota Vikings, I haven't taken Christian Fulton, the cornerback out of LSU. It seems like it's death, taxes, and Mike Zimmer wanting a cornerback in the first round, and I think he gets that. Xavier Rhodes isn't the elite shutdown guy that he has been the last several years. They've drafted Trey Waynes in the first round. They've drafted Mike Hughes in the first round. Those guys haven't developed into those true shutdown guys. So I could see them, Mackenzie Alexander's a free agent. I could see them moving on from Xavier Rhodes. I think Fulton's a guy that they can come in. He's tough. He's physical. He comes from DBU with LSU. And I think the Vikings go that route. I know a lot of Vikings fans might want a quarterback or another position, but I think this is where they go. At number 26, this is the Dolphins' third first-round pick. This is what they got from the Laremy Tunsil trade. I have them taking a running back, and the first and only running back in this mock draft, and that is Georgia's DeAndre Swift. The Dolphins, once again, are building this team up. I have them getting their quarterback with their first pick, a left tackle with their second pick, and now a running back, a trio of guys to build up this offense. They traded away Kenyon Drake. They don't really have a true bell cow go-to running back, and I think DeAndre Swift's the best guy in this class. He can do it all. He can catch the ball. He can run with power. He can run with speed. And the Dolphins need that guy, and I think Swift's the guy for them. At 27, I have the Seattle Seahawks taking Darrell Taylor, the defensive end from Tennessee. And he's not a guy that I see in a lot of mock drafts. I don't really see a ton of buzz for him in the first round. But when I watched him this summer, he really jumped out on tape with his speed, his bend, and his explosion around the edge. I know I talked to one of our former writers, Kyle Howe, who just raved about Darrell Taylor, talked about him as a first-round pick, and I got to thinking Seattle usually has a different way of looking at prospects than we do. They tend to really prefer those ultra athletes, which I think Darrell Taylor can be. And I think Taylor really fits well with what they want out of that Leo position, that weak side linebacker. And here's a team that doesn't really have that. You don't have the Cliff Avrils. They don't have Frank Clark anymore. They've got Jadeveon Clowney. They've got Ezekiel Ansah. But both those guys are potential free agents. And even if they franchise, even if they do extend Jadeveon Clowney, he's not the same type of player that Darrell Taylor is. So I think if they, hopefully they traded, for Jadeveon Clowney. If they can get him, play that 5 technique on one side, get a guy like Darrell Taylor, more of that speed athleticism on the weak side, I think it'd really help this defense out. At 28, I have the Baltimore Ravens taking a pass rusher also. I have them taking Julian Okwara from Notre Dame. Here's a team that's lived off of strong, dominant pass rushers. Terrell Suggs for so long. They've got Matthew Judon, who's developed well. They've got Jalen Ferguson, who they drafted well. I think they could use another guy to kind of push Ferguson, potentially turn him into more of a pass rushing specialist. Okwara is a guy that I think he's going to go in the first round, even though I don't have him rated there. Athletic, space type guy. I think he fits with what they want to do. They need to keep replenishing this defensive line, these pass rushers, and I think they do it again this year. At pick 29 is, I think, the surprise of the NFL postseason, and that is the Tennessee Titans making their run into the conference championship game. I think their biggest need heading into this offseason is getting a pass rusher opposite of Harold Landry. And I think if a guy like Yetur Gross-Matos from Penn State would be a nice prize for them here at the 29th pick. A guy I think would complement Harold Landry well. You could put him maybe on the strong side, use his length to take on tight ends. He's very good at penetrating into the backfield. I think he'd set the edge well. And that ability opposite of the ultra athlete speed pass rusher of Harold Landry, I think they complement each other well and give Tennessee that second pass rusher that they desperately need. At pick 30, I have the Green Bay Packers taking Kenneth Murray, a linebacker from Oklahoma. I wouldn't be shocked if Murray went higher than this 30th pick. I kind of thought, if the Las Vegas Raiders don't get Isaiah Simmons with that 12th pick, I wouldn't be shocked if they took Kenneth Murray with the 19th pick. I wouldn't even be shocked if Kenneth Murray went even higher, just because he's got that speed to go sideline to sideline. He's a physical guy. He's a playmaker. And this draft class doesn't have a lot of good linebackers in it. So a guy like Murray, who I think is a first-round pick to begin with, or that borderline first-round pick, because that need is up there, I could see a team reaching for him to get that guy, that instant impact. We've seen what San Francisco, when they've got Quan Alexander this year, what he did for their defense. We saw what Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch have done for the Cowboys at times. Those athletic linebackers, that's what you need in today's NFL, and I think Kenneth Murray fits with that, and because of the need, he could definitely be a top 20 pick. At 31, I have the Kansas City Chiefs taking Clemson cornerback A.J. Terrell. The Chiefs are another team that could use a physical press man corner, and I think Terrell fits that bill. When I watch him on tape, he likes to bully those wide receivers with his length, with his physicality. He's got the ability to turn and run deep with them. So I think that fits with what the Chiefs want out of that 31st pick. 32nd pick, San Francisco 49ers. I have him taking Xavier McKinney, the safety out of Alabama. As I mentioned with Kenneth Murray, of him potentially going earlier because of the lack of linebackers, I think McKinney's the same thing for safeties. You've got Delpit, you've got McKinney, you've got Ashton Davis to an extent, but those top two guys are, I think, in a range all to themselves. So a team that could use a true free safety could target McKinney. I think if he's here for the 49ers, it's a no-brainer. They got Jimmy Ward, who's playing well, but he's a free agent. They need a safety, that over-the-top type guy. They got Jaquiski Tart to be that strong safety. They need the free safety. I think McKinney would definitely fit that role. If we get into the second round, once again, I mentioned that I'm going to hit up on 5 second-round picks, mainly those teams that didn't have a first-round pick. For the Chicago Bears, they have picked 43 and 50. I decided to hit on both of those, and they go on offense. At 43, I have them taking Bryson Hopkins, the tight end out of Purdue. At pick 50, I am taking Josh Jones, the offensive tackle out of Houston. I think this early part of the second round, early to mid part of the second round, you're going to see a lot of tackles go off the board. Prince Wiggett, the Auburn tackle. You've got Lucas Nang from TCU. You've got Josh Jones from Houston. A few other guys. I think teams that could use a tackle are going to target these guys in the second round. The Bears need tackle help. The right tackle position has been a mess. Charles Leno at left tackle hasn't really, he's been serviceable at best. So I think they target someone like that to come in and help them out. They need a tight end bad. Bryson Hopkins is my number one tight end. I think he's an athletic guy that can be a move tight end, kind of what they had in Trey Burton. But I think he has a bigger upside than Trey Burton. Without Burton this year, the Bears' offense really kind of lacked that guy in the middle. Adam Shaheen hasn't developed, so I think they target once tight end in this second round. There's a lot of guys that could go there, and I think Hopkins is a good fit. Pick 49, Pittsburgh Steelers. I have them taking cornerback Cameron Dantzler from Mississippi State, another tall, lengthy guy. They want to continue to run more press man. I think Dantzler's a guy that could kind of do that for the Steelers. Pick 52, the Los Angeles Rams. They need to improve their offensive line. So I have them taking Shane Lemieux, a guard out of Oregon. He hadn't played as well as the season progressed at times, but he was still a big part of why C.J. Verdell was able to rush for so many yards for this Ducks team. He's the left tackle for the Ducks. Physical. He's not a guy that's going to just mull you over Mahler, but he's got the strength. He knows how to use his leverage to seal you off. I think he'd be a good fit within the Rams and their zone scheme. Then finally, 57, Houston Texans. I have them taking Ben Bredesen, the guard from Michigan. Another team that needs to improve their interior. The Texans have invested a lot in their offensive line. They traded for Laramie Tunsil. They drafted Max Sharpering. They drafted Titus Howard. I think they continue that trend to protect Deshaun Watson, to help out the rushing attack. So I think you put Bredesen in on that right guard position, and you really improve this offensive line.